All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fort Worth Music Academy podcast. I am very excited and also very nervous for our guest today because we're going to talk about some things that I'm really uncomfortable about and some things that most of our audience is going to be very uncomfortable about. Please welcome, everybody, Miss Rachel Coontz. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Good. It is actually Ace now, but I am good.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask because I've seen your social media profile change a little bit. I should have asked you this ahead of time.
Yeah.
I have always known
It's
you
okay.
as Rachel. So this is where, see, I'm already uncomfortable. We're going to have to talk about, we're going to talk through all of this. And you're going to help me and my audience work through our conservative ignorance on all of this. But let's give people a background as to how you and I know each other and kind of what you've been up to since then. So go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started taking lessons with Eric. Oh gosh, how many years ago has it been now?
It was, well, yeah, we were doing guitar, and then you
Yep,
started doing some singing with your playing,
I
which
did.
I'm not a vocal coach. You had a voice coach, and
I
but
did.
we tried kind of putting those things together a little bit. I want to say you were probably somewhere between 14 and 16 when we first started working together.
Yeah, I was. It was forever ago. I mean, it seems like almost like a lifetime ago right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
But I
and
am still continuing. So
yeah.
sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
of
What were you
course,
gonna say?
I see your keyboard behind you, and that makes me super happy to see. So when you went off to college, you went to Belmont in Nashville,
I did.
Tennessee. And my best friend went to Belmont as well. So I've had the pleasure of visiting the campus, and it's wonderful. Um, what what did you study in college? Because I know when you went off to college, it was to study, I think, music business.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So I studied primarily music business, but I had an audio emphasis. So it's called music business production. So basically, what it is it's you get kind of an overview of business, but also with an audio side. So I learned all about like recording technologies from the beginning up until now. So yes, I learned a ton about how the Les Paul has like really shaped music and like how this guitar came to be and like all this different stuff. And I also learned when they were literally taking like dots and wax paper and like playing it through the system where basically it just kind of it's almost like a music box, kind of like how a music box still works, where it just kind of turns.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. They use them in all the horror
Yeah,
movies, right?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yes, I learned from the start there until records and the CDs and just kind of that, just the whole progression and how crazy it's gotten and kind of like the monetization of music and things like that. And then I had a fantastic professor. Shout out to Nathan Adam, if anybody knows him. He's fantastic. He's all over Nashville doing all sorts of different stuff. But like he was so good. He went through everything, like all the history, all of the importance of monetization music and paying musicians, and then until now, and kind of how we're like navigating this crazy world and everything. And then I also had a really, really in-depth course with him, actually, another course that was in Pro Tools. And so it was kind of learning how to do all the shortcuts. And like we had all these intense tests where we'd have to sit down and we would have to go through, and under an hour we would have to have like a list of like 6 or 7 things, and like we'd have to go through, and if you didn't do one of those things or 2 of those things, you'd get severely counted off. So you would have to go through, have all the key commands, have everything, be able to edit as fast as you possibly can, because in the real world, I mean, you're going to have a lot more time, but at the same time, time is money. So you're going to have to sit down, and especially when you're recording with someone and someone says, oh, okay, I like this take, so move this take up here or move this take down here. You have to immediately be like, oh, okay, so I do this, 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 and this, and you have to know all the steps. And then I went into a class called demo production, where I learned to actually produce demos, more or less in my apartment, with Pro Tools as well. And so it was really, really heavy on Pro Tools, which I actually don't really use anymore, but but
I was
that's
going to
fine.
ask you. So are you? You're pretty adept with Pro Tools.
I am. It is not adept with me. It does not like me. It Pro Tools hates me. I don't like. Literally, my professor was like, "No, nobody like Pro Tools doesn't hate anybody." And then he sat down, and he looks at me, and he goes, "It hates you." And I was like, "Oh, I'm aware. Oh, I'm fully aware." Because like the internal clock on my computer messed up, which he had never seen that before. He was like, he comes in and it sounds like it's going through a trash compactor, and he's like, what? Like, he literally sat down with me and was like, I don't know what's wrong with your computer. I was like, yeah, I'm not surprised. But so now I actually use Logic, which the
Oh yeah,
newest
that
update
was
is
going to
like
be my
phenomenal.
next question, which is like GarageBand for pros.
Absolutely. The newest update is phenomenal. I really like it. I actually had not really used Logic a lot. Like one of my best friends, which his name is Joe, he's got me a lot of, I do actually live sound now. I do less studio stuff. I mean, I can still kind of, I mean, so I have a podcast of my own called Music City Confessional. And
Yes,
so I've been
tell
doing,
everybody what is that called?
yeah, it's called Music City Confessional.
Music
So
City
basically what it is,
Confessional. Oh yeah, give us the synopsis.
yeah. So basically, what it is it's kind of going through and it's finding different creators in Nashville at the top of their craft. So it's going through. We've had everybody from someone using electromagnetic therapy to help depression. We've had a host of different artists on. We're looking to have a trans artist on very soon because we're very in depth and like very passionate about the LGBTQ community and also mental health. So a lot of different things we talk about. I mean, it can be anything as like silly as we had one girl who like drank not to get too TMI here, but we had a girl who drank like some vegan shake or something before going on a run, and you can probably figure out what happened.
Oh
To
no.
yeah, to somebody dealing with depression and kind of like going through that whole cycle and kind of figuring out, you know, their mental health and everything. So we have a host of different serious to
So is the
funny
idea
topics.
that you're taking professionals from Nashville that are in the music industry and just getting them to spill the beans on embarrassing stories?
Essentially, yeah. So that's like the confessional part of it. Is like we don't
I love it.
yeah, so we don't want to roast anybody, but like me and my co-host, his name is Dan. We have a series of just a bunch of different stories from all throughout the industry. It kind of started where like I started volunteering as much as I possibly could. I started getting it connected as much as I possibly could, and I'd have, you know, not to sound like a jerk, but like we'd have a story where like I've worked with several different major up and coming artists, and like I've had so many embarrassing stories. And so it kind of started from that, and also wanting to, you know, interview people who have been looked over by all the major labels or all the major um interviewers and things like that. And like we kind of wanted to bring it back to like, oh, okay, you know, I have this friend who's like at the top of his craft creating his own company, and like he hired me to do live sound at all these different venues, and like he, you know, he also does hardcore metal and like all this different stuff, but like a lot of people haven't interviewed him because they just don't know, you know. So we're kind of filling the gap between major interviewers and just kind of like the nobodies. I mean, for lack of a better term, not to be rude, but like
People who are instrumentally impactful in the industry, but maybe who people don't know about.
absolutely. I mean, one of my friends, about a year ago or so, she mixed Ed Sheeran's song. Just randomly was like, "Oh
Wow.
yeah, I mixed Ed Sheeran," and like my name's on the credits in his album, and I was like, "What?" Like that's
Wow.
wild. So yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like we have all these people. It's absolutely insane, and so yeah, I really also started. So when I started interning, I was fortunate enough to get an internship at Big Machine,
Which is
which
now that, as some people may or may not know, that is the record label where that Taylor Swift got her start with, correct?
yes, that's correct. Yeah, now not quite favorable in the public eye at the moment.
Oh, why is that? I don't know about this.
Yeah, no, you're good. So basically, I'm trying to figure out what I can say on record. That sounds terrible, but basically, so Taylor Swift ended up leaving the record label. So okay, so there's something called a master, which is basically all the recording rights and the final finished product of a song. So a lot of different record labels now
Sorry, let me
will actually
balance that.
wow, no, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. So a lot of major record labels now will give artists the right to have those masters, which is huge. I mean, that's like the right to all your songs, all the production of your songs, everything.
That's a
And it's
big
like a
deal.
big deal.
That could make the difference
Absolutely.
between fortune and poverty.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, you know, the record label used to hold on to those because, you know, they hired all the engineers, they hired all these different
Wow.
people.
So record labels are letting artists keep the rights to their masters now?
It depends on the label.
Okay.
I know she's now at Universal, I believe, which they gave her like full access to everything. And so Big Machine, Scott Borchetta, who's leader of Big Machine. He kind of created Taylor Swift more or less. And so I'm not gonna go into detail on that, but like he basically found her and was like, okay,
Yeah,
like
I've heard a little bit about him.
absolutely. And I've met and worked with him. He's actually a nice person. He's just very cutthroat and like, okay, I need to get this done. I'm gonna get this done like my way. This is what we're gonna do. Like he's very, very just blunt. And a lot of people don't like that. It really depends because it can kind of
I
rub
do.
people the wrong way. I prefer blunt people. But it's the type of thing where essentially it got into this whole deal of like basically they kept her masters because she had like some insane contract that I've heard about. I don't know too much about it, but like essentially there's this big contract where he owns all of her masters, and it was like some insane like multiple album deal. Like he owns like I don't remember how much, but it's like this crazy deal that like nobody would sign now. Like it would be absolutely ludicrous to sign now. But it was so ironclad and he was so smart that based smart for him, not necessarily for her, but like he was so smart that he was able to keep her in this contract up until about now.
Right.
So he never gave her
Well, I just wanted to say for the record, to play devil's advocate, you know, I don't know how you feel, but sometimes people demonize the big labels and what they do. And I think the tides are changing in terms of what artists are willing to give up now in this more DIY environment. And of course, you can speak more to this, but it seems like, you know, if you're a big record label and you're taking on the risk and you're paying for someone to do this album and you're potentially giving them this platform, it's mutually reciprocal, whereas they're taking all the risk, but they're getting the bulk of the reward while also catapulting you to success. And so I think there is a fine line between demonizing the record industry and then also valuing what it is they're bringing to the table for these artists that may otherwise never have this platform in the first place. That's a tricky thing.
Absolutely. It's super tricky, especially like, so part of my education was really, really focused on management contracts and legal and all the legalities behind the music industry. And obviously, I mean, my professor would walk in and hold up the book and say, all right, you know, our textbook, this was thrown out 5 minutes ago. And he
I was going to say, because
in.
You were going through college during a very volatile time in the music industry.
Absolutely. I mean, it's insane because we have, you know, all these big companies like Spotify who, you know, we get 0.0001 cents for every play or something like that. I used to have it memorized, but I forget the actual like monetization value. But so, you know, you used to be paid for records, you used to be paid for CDs, you used to be paid for, you know, merchandise, all this different stuff. And now all the money is made from touring, which you can't really go on a tour without a big label. And so it's like, if you, you know, demonize the labels, then it's like, all right, well, you know, you're kind of screwing yourself out of having all this revenue. And it's like, but on the other hand, there are some smaller services like I forget what it's called, but essentially they help you go through and like plan tours in different cities, and they're like a little indie company. I can't remember what it's called, but they'll kind of go through and they'll help you make like an indie tour where it's all these people, I mean before COVID, all these people are open their houses to music and basically be like, oh, like we have a venue, you know. And so they'll have people come in and play, and it's like everybody will, you know, buy a ticket for like, I forget how much, maybe $5-10, and they'll sit in this person's living room and literally listen to music. And so it's like there's a lot of grassroots companies that are like that, and so it's just kind of it's a really tricky thing, because like I come from, you know, more of the label side where I was able to study under a producer for about a year. His name is Julian Raymond. He's very, very phenomenal, very sweet guy,
And
more of a
this was
family
at Big
guy.
Machine?
It was. Yes. Very, very family guy. Family oriented. You would never like really know that he's won 2 Grammys. Like I didn't even know that when I was interning. I mean, I researched him, but like he never really mentioned it until one time he had a convocation, which like at Belmont, it's like you have to get certain amount of these to kind of complete your education. So it can be anything in like, you have to go to a certain number of chapels